Well, I'm learning so much today. Thank you to the two of you. Let me ask you this. Why is the fear of the unknown such a significant factor in our mental and emotional health? You both have mentioned this a few times. Mary, your thoughts?
Well, our brains are wired for survival and it learns how to track all the data that we're possibly in danger. And our brains then begin to predict the likelihood of us encountering danger based on patterns that we've experienced in the past. Well, the challenge is when everything's unknown, we don't have the ability to pick up on the data that cues us that we may be in danger.
Right.
So uncertainty adds this whole layer of unpredictability where we don't know how to respond and we also don't know how long it's going to go for.
Right.
That state of the uncertainty, not knowing if I'm in danger or not being able to read the signals, that can create a lot of dysregulation for people when they're dealing with that.
Well, and we're
Part of
living,
the other, I was just going to say,
yeah,
and part of the challenge is that when your brain is in that mode, you're automatically going to think about the worst case scenario.
right.
You've invented it all already. Hmm.
Right. And when you're living in a time of uncertainty, you are forecasting the worst scenarios, right? And if you
Absolutely.
watch a lot of news a lot of time, you can just always be anticipating the worst outcome. Andrew, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly. I totally agree that uncertainty, it can breed anxiety.
Hmm.
And because the truth is, we aren't sure of many things. I don't know exactly when this conversation is going to end, but I'm not freaked out about it, right? There is a degree of uncertainty that we are okay with. But what we are not aware of is when we start to fill in the blanks, we start to fill in the gaps with negative imaginations,
Right.
right? And if
Yeah.
we're not really aware of the details of them, they can still be there,
Yeah.
but they're under the surface. So we feel this anxiety and we're not exactly sure what we're anxious about. And
Mhm.
that can be really problematic where we don't really
Mhm.
kind of tune in to what we're actually anticipating, what we're
Mhm.
thinking, what we're imagining about the
Mhm.
future, because then we can't challenge it.
And I think that your whole point about community all week, it's really important how we talk about these things in community. Because if we're perpetually facing this uncertain time and bad news on the news or however we're sourcing our information, if we perpetuate those conversations, that also breeds fear, doesn't it? It's just like a hot pot for it. So it's really important how we interact in our community with each other about these things. Let me ask you this. What does the Bible say about PTSD? Are there any examples of people with what we now call PTSD in the Bible? Andrew?
Well, as you know, as you imagine, you wouldn't find PTSD in the
Right,
Bible,
right.
but the Bible is filled with stories of difficult challenges and moments that people experience and their reactions to it.
Yeah.
So we catch glimpses of maybe parts and pieces of what could be experienced as PTSD or stress, drama, trauma, all of that stuff. But Job definitely comes to mind.
Mm.
He experienced loss after loss after loss, and it's as you read it, you can see the distress. You can see him wondering, like, what's happening, what's going on. Um, but thankfully, there is a resolve that he comes back to. Though worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh
Yeah.
will I see God. There's a sense that God is here, and as much as he's crying out to God, he's crying out to God because he knows that God is there,
Yeah.
right? So I love his experience. It's a real human. It gives us human insight and an opportunity to see that no matter what we're going through is the objective.
Yeah.
Through we go
Yes.
through, but we can also grow through, and I think that's an
Yeah.
important thing to hold on to.
Oh, I love it. We can go through and
Hmm.
we can grow through. Thank you for that. Mary, what are your thoughts on biblical examples of this?
Oh, yeah. I think there's plenty. If you kind of read between the lines, I think about David when he was on the run for his life. And, in the scripture, he'd be talking about dreams and the typical symptoms that you would see. You see him as this incredibly strong warrior, and yet he kind of moved into this place of almost fear based avoidance. And again, that speaks to me of uh, possible PTSD. But what I love about the Bible is how it normalizes that as human beings, we will have these types of struggles. We will need to lean on the Lord when we go through these difficult times. And that's, in fact, what got David through.
Yeah.
This is not something we're meant to try to just white knuckle through on our own, that we are to reach out for help and support and through prayer as well.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I love Jesus' words. You will have trouble in this world. He doesn't
That's
promise
right.
us a stress-free, pain-free life, but he says, I've overcome the world. So that's what we've been talking about all week, the hope that we find when no matter what we're going through, we can grow through because God is with us in that. And certainly helps us overcome. So in your final thoughts on this today, what are steps that people can take toward wholeness? And that can be in all areas of our life. And Andrew, I'll start with you.
I definitely believe God is always at work in us, on our behalf. So tuning into that, discovering what God is doing, reminding ourselves that He has a plan and that there is healing in every moment for us. Every single moment. I used to try to race through and just get out of trouble and get out of problems when I'm realizing now, oh, I can slow things down so I can experience authority in the moment, not just over the moment, but in the moment. So there are opportunities when we can't still the storm and speak peace to the storm outside. We can learn to speak peace to the storm inside. And that's really valuable, I find.
I love that. I too can relate. I love to avoid and get rid of the pain real quickly, but I've been learning to sit in it and experience God in it. So it's a great word. Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Avoidance. I like to call avoidance as the kryptonite to mental health, because if you're not dealing with it, it just accumulates, and your life becomes smaller and smaller. Your window of tolerance decreases, your ability to be resilient decreases. So I would say to people who may be struggling with PTSD is to please honor your story. It needs to be told, it needs to be shared. By virtue of just sharing your story, especially with somebody who's wise and supportive and empathetic and can pray for you, can be so healing. In doing that, we're moving from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic growth. And we can take the most difficult situations, and as we choose to lean into it and we choose to invite God into it, we grow and we learn in our character, grow in our faith, and we grow in our resilience as well.
Well, that is it, and that is why we have hope. Thank you both so much for being with us all this week, for your insight and just for your heart and how you serve people. I know I've learned a lot, and I know our viewers have. Thank you. Well,
You're
up
welcome.
next, PTSD, infidelity, and separation, how a doomed marriage was saved. Watch this.